Hello YouTubers, welcome back. As you know, on this computer I use Windows 7, and today we're going to talk about Windows 7 and the support for Windows 7 coming to end. If you started up your Windows 7 computer, there is a good chance that you'll see this screen. Now, if you don't want to see this screen again, or if you don't care about this, you could just go ahead, check the box, and just close the window. Now what this means is that the Windows 7 support is coming to an end on 14th of January 2020, and what does that mean, you might ask. But before we dive into that, we might want to see why people would want to use Windows 7. Let me share some stats with you before that. This is all public information. If we look at all platforms, the operating systems that are in use at the moment this is the breakdown: 41% Android and 34.8% Windows. But if you were to only look at Windows devices in desktop environment, so I'm not using all platforms, all devices, this is Windows versions only within desktop environment. So 62.98% is Windows 10, which is expected because that's the latest version of Windows that's available, and it comes pre-packaged on most of the new devices starting probably 2015 or 2016, since Windows 10 was released in 2015. Now you might be shocked to see that Windows 7 is got about 28% of the share, and you might ask the question, why do people still stick Windows 7? Well, there's a few reasons. People might not want to use, so between Windows 7 and Windows 10 there's a huge shift of UI. The user interface is changed a fair bit. Everything is half done. Like, you still have the old-fashioned control panel, but now you have a settings button which has some of the settings which redirect you back to control panel. It's very clunky, but Microsoft's doing a good job, trying to migrate all the settings into one settings interface, and probably they might do away with control panel. But I personally, in my opinion, that's not happening for another 10 years, right? Because it's so embedded into the OS, it's pretty hard to get rid of control panel. But control panel is not the only thing. Windows 10 takes user privacy to the next level. Now, back in the day, before Google, Microsoft cared much less about how much money they made about by gathering user data, user behavior, user analytics, user preferences, and that sort of thing. But since Windows, well, to compete with, I don't blame Microsoft about this, but since to compete with other bigger companies, they introduced new privacy settings which will want all sorts of data from you if you're using Windows 10. Well, they give you an option to turn off, to be fair, but most of the settings are turned on by default, right? It's similar to Android asking to send app analytics to the developer, or to make Android better, they get you to a screen when you're setting up a new Android phone to send data back to Google. And Apple does the same thing with iOS. So this is not something new. This is, inherent into any new OS that you install. It's a common thing. But yeah, going back to what we were talking about, 28% of the people that run Windows on their desktops still use Windows 7. And for all the reasons that I just mentioned, it is fair, and honestly, I'm using Windows 7 for the same reason, because it's a lot less resource intensive. It gets the job done. You still get updates for Windows 7. Before I recorded this video, it did a whole bunch of updates for 20 minutes because I don't turn this computer on very often. This is probably a good place to check what the end of support website looks like for Windows 7. So when you go to the Windows 7 website, or the Windows website, and search for Windows 7, this is the recording you get to. After 10 years support for Windows, so it's been 10 years since Windows 7's been out. Apparently I didn't know that. On the 14th of January 2020, there's no longer support. So what does that mean? Basically, you don't get any tech support. So I would be surprised if anyone with Windows 7 actually calls Microsoft for tech support, but that's what's being discontinued. you don't get any updates. So this is very important. So what you have on the computer in terms of Windows 7 as of the 14th of January 2020 is what you will continue to have. And the next big ticket item they decided to put in the end, for some reason, you don't get any security updates. So if there's a new ransomware that's exploiting one of the Windows 7 vulnerabilities, you're never going to get you probably have to wipe your computer clean and install probably Windows 10 if you've gotten into that situation. Yeah, that's what's in it. So these three are the big ticket items they wanted to bring up, what that means when they say that support's ending for Windows 7. But you do get, there is an exception to this. If you're using volume licensing, meaning if you're a company running Windows 7, you could still pay to get service. But if you're an individual user like me running Windows 7 because you don't want to upgrade, I think you're pretty much on your own. I would probably continue to use it because I am a bit tech savvy, and I know I don't do anything risky on this computer. I only do what this computer is for, which is basically I use software for recording on this computer, which is compatible with Windows 7. I wouldn't go doing risky things like going to new websites or downloading a bunch of new software and trying to install, or opening fishy emails or attachments from such emails from people I don't know. I don't do any of that stuff. So by discretion, if you want to do that, you could follow some simple rules. I'll make another video about that, and then you should be able to use Windows 7. And they give you a few options, basically getting you to move to Windows 10, and that's pretty much it. And they talk about how Windows 10's thinner, lighter, faster. But I think personally, in my opinion, Windows 10 is much more resource intensive compared to Windows 7. But now, if you don't like what you hear, you probably don't have an option. You just have to go with Windows 10, right? And then they try and sell you how Windows 10 is the OS of the future. Now finally, coming to the section where if you're one of those people that don't want to take a risk and want to upgrade to Windows 10, you could do that safely. Microsoft had a utility they've created for people to upgrade to Windows 10 in the past, and they had a cutoff date to say you can only upgrade before this date. But I do this most of the times, and it still works. I've done it for some of my friends, for some of my customers. So you got to download Media Creation Tool. Just go to Google and search for Media Creation Tool and click the first link, which is from Microsoft. Please be careful and don't click on ads. They might take you to a different screen and get you to download spyware or malware. Now this is what it should say: download Windows 10, and you can download the tool, and I'll just show you. Just called MediaCreationTool.exe. It's a very small piece of software. It should take a few seconds if you have a good internet connection, unlike me. I've got ADSL. That's pretty much it. If you have any questions, please comment, and if you know someone who's also using Windows 7 and who would benefit from this video, go ahead and share it with them. If you like this video, please share with your friends. Comment if you'd like to start a conversation. Come on, don't be shy, and hit the subscribe button now.